Welcome one and all to the world's first Scottish and UK Polluter Awards. Stay tuned as we present the results of our public vote on Scotland and the UK's worst polluters. We begin with our Scottish awards. And our first category is the Worst Polluter in a Supporting Role Award. Now, I'm sure our voters can confirm that this was a tricky choice. We had some big names nominated and each brought their A game to make sure fossil fuels continue to cling on.
Hi, first up, we have JP Morgan Chase. And first up, we have JP Morgan Chase. This big-time investment bank has never been afraid to break the rules, so that pesky Paris Agreement wasn't going to stop them investing $195 billion in fossil fuel projects since 2015. Their speciality is financing ultra-deep water, oil and gas, and as well as liquefied natural gas. But this tour de fossil forces had help all along the way. Scotland has offered them residency since 1999, and their offices in Glasgow's Argyle Street. Now let's look to our next candidate. That is Oil and Gas UK. OG UK CEO Deirdre Mitchie has highlighted that their lobbying of the UK government led to reduced taxes on the oil and gas sector, saving them $100 million a year. Now that is a hashtag girlboss move. Next up, we have Strathclyde Pension Fund. The Glasgow City Council's fund is the second largest in the UK. Their 500 million plus going into fossil fuels covers ExxonMobil, Shell, Chevron, Rio Tinto, BP, as well as other big names. The council declaring a climate emergency while investing in all these polluters shows their commitment to greenwashing, but it won't wash away our sleepless nights worrying about unfolding climate calamity. TK Shipping. This is the world's 8th biggest oil and gas shipping firm, which specializes in transporting liquefied natural gas, which is extracted from some of the most fragile ecosystems on Earth, such as in the Russian Arctic. And TK know how to turn a profit by reducing their spending on workers, producing their oil and gas in some of the least regulated areas of the world, such as Angola and West Papua, while plonking their headquarters in Bermuda for tax avoidance purposes. Their office in Glasgow is right next door to a COP26 venue as well. Good to know thy neighbours, especially when they're as committed to climate catastrophe as TK. And finally, we have Barclays. This big boss bank have invested $85 billion in fossil fuel projects since the Paris Agreement, making them Europe's #1 polluter funder. They also have shiny new offices just south of Glasgow city centre. Lovely.
Wow, what a rich palette of exploitation we've just heard about. Let's find out the winner, shall we? And the trophy for the worst polluter in a supporting role goes to Barclays. And now we go to Divest Strathclyde to accept the award on behalf of Barclays.
And welcome to the Glasgow Calls Out Polluters Scottish Polluter Awards. We're here in front of the new Barclays Glasgow campus building, which is currently under construction as we speak behind us, to present the award for Worst Polluter in a Supporting Role to Barclays Bank. I'm here with Isla Scott of the campaigning group Divest Strathclyde, who is kindly going to accept the award on their behalf. Isla.
Hiya. So Barclays is one of the worst records for addressing climate change. They put billions into fossil fuel projects, and they're one of the worst funders for fossil fuel infrastructure in the whole of Europe. They invest in coal mines, tar sands, fracking and deep Arctic drilling. An example is the Keystone XL pipeline in Canada, which is being strongly resisted by the Indigenous peoples there because it would severely impact them. In the year 2020, it was found that Barclays had invested over $26.4 billion in fossil fuel projects, and that was an increase of $200 million from the previous years. So much for their net zero commitments.
Thanks, Isla. It sounds like they're a worthy winner of this award. So if there's anyone out there who's watching and hearing about these things, is there anything that they can do to take action about this?
Yes, indeed there is. The folk are very welcome to join Glasgow Calls Out Polluters, to come along to our meetings and take part in our actions and events, which are to expose the big polluters like Barclays. And there is an open letter which organisations can sign to kick polluters out of COP26. And Divest Strathclyde, we campaign for the Strathclyde Pension Fund to divest from the 836 million that they have invested in fossil fuels, and that's in many of the same multinational companies that Barclays finances. So we'd love you to come along to our meetings, take part in our actions and events. We have an open letter as well to the Strathclyde Pension Fund Committee, and both Glasgow Calls Out Polluters and Divest Strathclyde will be organising around COP26, which is coming up in November.
Thanks very much, Isla. So that just leaves it for me to present to you this beautiful award for Worst Polluter in a Supporting Role for Barclays Bank.
Thank you very much, and congratulations to Barclays for such a well-deserved award for the huge contribution that they make to the climate crisis. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Divest Strathclyde. Welcome if you've just joined us to the Scottish Polluter Awards. Despite the rhetoric around climate change, the UK government still backs big polluters in the North Sea, such as the disastrous proposal for the Cambo Oil Field. Our North Sea Numpty Award acknowledges polluters continuing to leach hydrocarbons in the North Sea. Now let's introduce our nominees.
First up, it's our friends BP. BP have been involved in the North Sea ever since companies started drilling deep for hydrocarbons. Contrary to their recent virtue signalling and waffle around net zero, they sit on the North Sea's largest oil field and continue to obtain new exploration contracts. Next up are the masters of the shilling. Welcome, Oil and Gas UK. When Greenpeace occupied climate-wrecking BP infrastructure, Oil and Gas UK's Gareth Wynne bravely stepped forward to defend our need for the sector. When an employment lawyer commented on the general stripping back of employment rights in the sector, here was Oil and Gas UK's Alex Thorne to proclaim that they don't recognise those claims. Oil and Gas UK deserve huge credit for their tireless shilling of the North Sea oil and gas sector. Next, another legendary polluter, Shell. Oil and Gas Shell have been involved in North Sea operations since back in the day. They own the Brent field, which as early as 2008 had already produced a staggering 2 billion barrels of oil and 5.7 trillion cubic feet of gas. Shell has also been a pioneer in preventing anything effective being done to slow the climate catastrophe. They filed protest blocking injunctions against activists from XR Scotland and Greenpeace as recently as 2019. Fourth, it's the lesser-known entity, Chrysaor. At the time of voting, Chrysaor was the biggest North Sea private equity firm, as well as the biggest producer of oil in the North Sea. Since then, Chrysaor and Premier Oil have merged to become Harbour Energy, a listed company. In April this year, Harbour Energy described itself as, quote, producing over 200,000 barrels of oil equivalent per day from the North Sea and Southeast Asia, unquote. At the end of 2020, they operated 14 fields across the UK, held 11 licenses across 18 blocks in Norway, with total operations emitting just under 1 million tonnes of CO2 per year. At the time of the merger, the partnership of Chrysaor with Premier Oil was set to see them become the biggest hydrocarbon producer in the British sector in the North Sea. Finally, it's the perennial gas bags, INEOS. In only 5 years, giant frackers INEOS have become a major player in the North Sea oil and gas sector and seem committed to extending its life and reducing ours for decades to come. They are set to invest £500 million to keep the Forties pipeline system in operation for at least the next 20 years. Back to you, Kat.
I can feel the heat, such a competitive field, but there can only be one winner. And the winner of the North Sea Numpty Award is BP. They just picked aggressive fracker and sports washer extraordinaires INEOS. And now over to BP or not BP to accept the award on BP's behalf.
BP or not BP? That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the world to squeeze the last drops of oil from a dying planet, or to heed the climate crisis and by just quitting, end it. BP or not BP are delighted to accept this award of North Sea Numpty on behalf of BP. We can think of nobody more deserving. We want to congratulate BP on their decades of persistence to strike oil off the coast of Shetland, helping to guarantee a future for climate change. BP's legacy in the world of oil is impressive, claiming responsibility for the Deepwater Horizon explosion, killing 11 workers and releasing almost 200 million gallons of crude oil into the ocean. BP openly admit that their business plan will push us well into runaway climate change, but they will not be deterred, courageously continuing to extract our natural resources, tar sands, drilling in Alaska, with no regard for workers' rights or human rights. But they don't just excel in extraction. BP are also world leaders in greenwash, offering tiny amounts of funding in exchange for priceless publicity. They splash their logo all over the National Polluter Awards, the British Museum and the Scottish Ballet. It's a wonder the ballerinas don't slip with that oily mess all over their production. BP or not BP is a UK-wide network of performers and activists highlighting BP's crimes and kicking BP out of our arts. We've successfully won campaigns to remove BP as a sponsor from the International Festival and the Edinburgh Science Festival. And after taking over their exhibition space with drama and song for 3 years running, the Scottish National Portrait Gallery have said that they will no longer host the National Portrait Awards while BP are a sponsor. The next step, making Scotland's ballet free from BP's oily grip. Thank you again for awarding BP the North Sea Numpty. We're delighted to accept on their behalf.
Welcome back to the Scottish and UK Polluter Awards, where we, your hosts, Glasgow Calls Out Polluters, are delightedly disgusted to announce the Gaslight Award. There has been a lot of hot air recently about gas being a bridge fuel, and promoting its use is central to any transition away from fossil fuels. This is hot air, we say. Fracking for shale gas is one of the most environmentally destructive forms of extraction imaginable. Now let's introduce our contestants for this most coveted award.
Thanks, Kat. First up, it's Peel Ports. Peel Ports are the very shady company looking to operate the liquefied natural gas plant in Hunterston in Largs. Their proposed Hunterston Park site, also next to the ailing Hunterston Nuclear Power Station, is due for massive redevelopment over the next 20 years, providing a hub for a host of energy-intensive activities that violate Scotland's climate commitments. Amongst other climate-wrecking operations, they built the port for INEOS's Dragon ships, which shipped in fracked gas from Pennsylvania, despite Scotland's moratorium on fracking. Next up is TK Shipping. You may never have heard of TK Shipping, but in the world of oil and gas shipping, they are very serious players. And Glasgow is one of their most important bases of operation. TK's Glasgow office specialises in coordinating the shipping of liquefied natural gas, known as LNG. TK are a key part of the infrastructure responsible for extending the life of fossil fuel extraction, and no surprise, they are a nominee for our Gaslight Award. Third up is an old favourite, SSE. SSE are one of the UK's big 6 energy providers, listed on the FTSE 100 and a massive polluter. SEPA's Scottish Pollution Release Inventory, revealed in 2019, the site emitted 1.6 million tonnes of carbon dioxide. In 2018, they were also top of the list with 1.9 million tonnes, 1 million tonnes more than in 2017, when the power station was lower down in second place and contributed to the rise in climate pollution from Scottish businesses by 3% between 2017 and 2018. Fourth, it's fossil frackers, INEOS. INEOS is a multinational chemicals company owned by infamous tax dodger Jim Ratcliffe, a prominent Brexiteer and the UK's richest person living the wine-swilling life in Monaco. Their oil refinery in Grangemouth happens to be Scotland's second biggest emitter of carbon dioxide in 2019, emitting 1.3 million tonnes of carbon emissions. And now they've just announced they're investing £1 billion to build a new gas-powered hydrogen plant at Grangemouth. Nobody loves gassing our planet like INEOS. Our penultimate contender is Shell. In Scotland, Shell's activities extend to 3 places in particular: the most modern facility in Fife, the North Sea, and St Fergus gas terminal in Peterhead. At Mossmoran, Shell operates the natural gas liquid plant, separating a mix of gas liquids received from Peterhead before shipping them off to international markets for products such as plastic and pharmaceuticals. The site alone emitted a staggering 303,000 tonnes of carbon dioxide emissions in 2019, making them a surefire contender for a Gaslight Award. Finally, we have ExxonMobil. Where should we start with ExxonMobil? A company with an unmatched commitment to pushing us towards climate breakdown for the profit of a gluttonous few. Let's return to Mossmoran, where Exxon are responsible for the Fife ethylene plant. This plant has inflicted the infamous Mossmoran flare and released a list of pollutants into the community longer than your arm, leading to reports of numerous ill health effects.
Wow, what an astounding set of achievements we've just heard about, but there can only be one winner. So who is it going to be? INEOS, these serial frackers just pipped hellish polluter Shell to the award. Now over to our friends at Friends of the Earth Falkirk to accept the award on INEOS's behalf.
Their industrial works in the background to present them with this award for Polluter of the Year. Okay. Well, I think Mr. Ratcliffe, if he is around, or anybody at the front door, we've pressed the buzzer and been informed that we're not allowed to film or take photographs in front of the building, and that we'll have to make an appointment to see Mr. Ratcliffe to deliver this award. So far we've not been able to get in, but we'll keep trying. Any chance of getting into the building, and there are some people looking rather suspiciously at us on their videos. I think I would like to formally accept this award on behalf of INEOS. And my name is Richard Dyer, and I'm speaking for the Falkirk branch of Friends of the Earth. So I'm very disappointed that we've not been able to deliver it to Jim Ratcliffe, the owner of INEOS, but on his behalf, I accept the award. Thank you very much.
Your details will be passed, okay?
Thank you.
Okay,
That's very
thank
kind.
you.
No problem.
Can I just ask if you're representing any organisation?
Friends of the Earth.
Friends of the Earth. Okay, thank you.
And thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, FOE Falkirk. Welcome back to the Scottish and UK Polluter Awards, where we, your hosts, Glasgow Calls Out Polluters, are happy to announce the winner of our next category, the Farming Pollution and Subsidies Award. There were an impressive barrel of rotten contenders for this award, so without further ado, let's introduce the contenders.
First up is Mowi. Mowi claims it's at the forefront of Scottish sustainable salmon. This Norwegian-owned multinational's credentials include cramming salmon in their tens of thousands into cramped feeding lots, many nearly falling apart from sea lice infestations. The density of salmon leads to a lot of fish poo, which falls and blankets the sea below, smothering the local ecology. No great problem, though, according to Mowi. They can just blitz the sea lice with pesticide, breaching SEPA guidelines for chemical usage in the process. These guys don't let rules, reason, or morality get in the way of their profits. Next up is Crown Estate Scotland. Crown Estate Scotland are touted as a public body under the auspices of the Scottish Government. They have jurisdiction over virtually all of Scotland's seabed and rights to offshore renewable energy, gas, and carbon dioxide storage in the sea. Crown Estates function as the gatekeeper for Scotland's fish farming industry, leasing to over 250 fish farms at present. From their virtual monopoly of the coastline, they reap tidy profits with virtually no local accountability on how decisions are made. I'm sure the Scottish public feels exceptionally well represented by these neo-feudal icons. And finally, we have the Buccleuch Group. Talking about neo-feudalism, the Buccleuch Group is owned and chaired by the current Duke of Buccleuch. The 10th Duke, Richard Scott, as of late 2019, was the second largest private landowner in Scotland, with more than 240,000 acres. Buccleuch's estate benefits significantly from public subsidies, including the tidy sum of £650,000 for its Thornhill estate in 2018 alone. But he has bemoaned the fact that leaving the EU means withdrawal from its common agricultural policy payments, meaning potentially less subsidies for the estates. Boo-hoo. The Duke employs Benny Higgins, close economic advisor to Nicola Sturgeon, to manage his estates. This arrangement seems to work really well in Buccleuch's favour, with the estate as a business paying precisely nothing in taxes. Truly a leading exponent of Scotland's unsustainable subsidy farming model. Back to you, Kat.
What a lineup! It almost beggars the economy. Sorry, I mean belief. Now, let's find out who the winner is. And the award for Scotland's most committed and successful farmer of pollution and subsidies goes to Crown Estate Scotland. Bravo! Now let's go to a very special guest to accept this award. One is proud to have the honour of collecting the Farming Polluter of the Year award on behalf of Crown Estate Scotland, especially when the award was the result of a popular vote among one's subjects. It is admirably perceptive of them to understand and appreciate one's good work, not least because one is generally pretty secretive about how one exploits the national assets. One doesn't exactly go bragging about it on Twitter. Crown Estates control and manage the seabed, which rightly belongs to each and every one of our subjects, with no public say whatever on how this is done. As always, one rules on their behalf. They give licenses for a modest charge to fish farmers owned by global companies based overseas. They then give this money to the Scottish Government, who might use some of it to benefit local communities or not. By licensing farms, Crown estates permit, without prejudice, any kind of pollution farmers can get away with. This includes noise pollution from acoustic deterrent devices, which farmers like to use to scare away seals who might eat their fish. These devices also harm cetaceans, such as dolphins, porpoises, and whales. This activity is now illegal unless properly licensed, but farmers are continuing to use them without proper consent. One's friends in the Scottish Government continue to collaborate in this activity. One would prefer that they shot the seals, of course, as a sporting activity, just like one does with grouse and deer. But for some reason, one's subjects dislike this idea so much that the authorities have given in and made it illegal. Some people say that our farms are harmful and should not be allowed. They encourage the poor not to buy salmon, even though it is now nearly as cheap as dog food and almost as nasty. They say that the farmed salmon have made true wild Scottish salmon almost extinct. Luckily, one has enough wild salmon on one's estate at Balmoral and in our East Coast rivers that one does not have to worry too much about that. It is just a local problem on the West Coast. This is all thanks to that clever Mr. Alex Salmon, who made a law against salmon farms on the East Coast. So that's all right, and they can have as many as they like on the West. Jolly good for them. One would not like to encourage one's subjects to oppose the economic development which comes with more farms, no matter how much harm it does. That's why Crown Estates are Farming Polluter of the Year. Thank you for recognising one's unequalled power to harm. Ladies, gentlemen, and those who do not fit inside the heteronormative gender binary, welcome back to the Scottish Polluter Awards. And the next category is a War Award. Now let's go to announcing our nominees who have made astonishing efforts to destroy lives around the world and pollute outrageously while doing so. The nominees for this award are...
Thanks, Kat. So for this award, we've got Fasline's nuclear submarines. Fasline's nuclear weapons, hosted on 4 submarines, supposedly keep the world safe. So I'm sure the 200 billion they cost the public is a pittance then, or not. As well as bringing in mountains of cash to arms manufacturers who design and build the submarines, these mega bombs know how to side hustle as well. The added chance of plutonium leakages every time the warheads are moved on Scottish roads, which is only every few days. They're also happy to stick around even when we'd rather they didn't, with no existing solution to deal with their problem of nuclear waste. Next up, we have serial bad guys, BAE Systems. They're as British as the Bake Off, our largest manufacturer, and a whopping 98% of the total sales come from military-related products, with their support for the US Navy and Air Force and Saudi Arabia as their 3rd largest customer. BAE Systems relish in their role as genocide enablers. Among the exhaustive list of bereavements they've caused are the 100,000 deaths in Yemen that could not have happened without their support. And any doubts you have on their position over racism were given sordid clarity when they supplied weapons to the US police fighting Black Lives Matter protesters. Next up, we have the unlikely candidate of Prestwick Airport. You may think this regional airport would be unworthy of mention, but it's a stopover point for the world-beating US military, beating the world to a pulp that is. Prestwick welcomes this force of oppression as it enacts government-sponsored kidnap, and military personnel are always invited to the Prestwick Hotel for a much-needed spa break after coordinating all that mass murder. Oh, it's so stressful. Self-care. Well, it is just 1 in 800 US military bases around the world. Taken together, this makes the US military world's 55th biggest emitter in the world. So that's beating Norway and Sweden. So you'll agree, some good candidates.
This is an impressive set of efforts, but only one can be crowned Chief Warmonger. And the winner of the 2021 War Award is... BAE Systems. This is much deserved. Death and destruction is where they truly excel. But unfortunately, BAE Systems have heard about the award they're receiving and have torpedoed Campaign Against the Arms Trade. So the video accepting the award will be with us within a week or so. So on to our next award in the UK Polluter Awards, the Slimiest Greenwash Award. Tonight, we are highlighting the companies whose PR teams have worked tirelessly to soak themselves in green. They pretend they are environmental heroes to cover up for their polluting actions. It's pretty slimy and we love it.
Thanks, Kate. First up is Drax. Drax showed their commitment to the NHS when their cooling tower was lit up blue at the beginning of the pandemic. If only they brought the same passion to the health crisis they are feeling as they do at being the UK's single largest carbon emitter. But for Drax, one slimy performance wasn't enough for them. After switching its focus from coal to sustainable biomass burning, i.e. burning trees, Drax announced it would be the first carbon negative power station by 2030 by capturing and storing the CO2 it emits from burning wood. That explanation conveniently covers up that Drax's negative emissions claims are based on unproven bioenergy carbon capture and storage, or BECCS technology, which is unlikely to work. Meanwhile, Drax emitted over 13 million tonnes of CO2 from burning 7 million tonnes of wood in 2020, and this burning is degrading some of the world's most biodiverse forests in Canada, the southern USA, Estonia, and Latvia, whilst also polluting nearby communities and destroying wildlife. Next is INEOS. INEOS have perfected the art of sport washing, sponsoring a campaign for kids' health, a Tour de France team, a UK sailing team, and a Nice football club. However, it is hard to run the Daily Mile, as the INEOS campaign encourages you to do if you're dead, like the 8.4 million people who died around the world from fossil fuel air pollution in 2018. Next is Shell. For International Women's Day 2020, Shell rebranded their social media to Sheil, she''ll. As women make up 70% of the world's poorest and do an average 2.5 times more unpaid labour than men, the impact of climate change falls disproportionately and violently on women. Now, I can't speak for all women, but nothing makes me feel more empowered than worrying about climate breakdown, ruining mine and my friends' futures. And Shell didn't stop there. This double nominee took to Twitter to ask each and every one of us what we were willing to reduce to achieve a smaller carbon footprint. We at GCOP are willing to reduce Shell to ashes for this cause. Next is HSBC, fossil fuel funder, facilitator of money laundering, and petitioner for a law to crack down on pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong. They were eager to establish themselves as a social justice icon, with its "We are not an island" adverts on World Cultural Diversity Day. It is true that HSBC funds extraction in areas with a huge range of cultures, and if it was an island, it would be pretty screwed due to sea level rises and oil spills that it's funding. Next up, BP. This oil giant is clearly just as committed to past colonialism as it is to present, as it is the main corporate funder of the British Museum. BP gets to stick their bright green logo on every poster and gets credit for the public education the museum provides. Who better to teach our kids than the ones taking away their futures? The fact the British Museum and BP are BFFs show how fossil fuel extraction in the global south is a direct continuation from violent Western imperialism. And finally, BlackRock. Joe Biden's bestie BlackRock is a member of the Climate Action 100 Plus group and loves to brag about its green investment funds. Indeed, they have an impressive collection of records. The world's largest investor in fossil fuels and one of the largest investors in deforestation. And as well as scale, they have scope, funding land grabs and human rights abuses in the Amazon rainforest, Indonesia, Liberia, and Papua New Guinea. If you're a prestigious institution wanting to get away from funding violence, get away with funding violence on a global scale, BlackRock are your guys. So
now that we're all covered in slime, let's hear the winner. The winner of the UK Polluter Awards slimiest greenwash is... Drac. Now, let's go to Friends of the Earth Liverpool, who will accept the award on behalf of Drax.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am delighted and honoured to be here this evening at this prestigious awards ceremony. So wonderful to be here, highlighting all the good deeds of these companies who are really taking the climate crisis seriously. So we have here Drac, who won a few awards. They're a wonderful company, as you can see. Here in Liverpool, their trains travel up and down the line and they tell us about all the wonderful things that they're doing for the environment. They are pioneering renewable energy, sustainable biomass for the future. It's wonderful. We can just carry on doing as we are. We make power station powering the national grid. And it's all fine because they just keep planting more trees and actually making the world a much greener place. It's just absolutely wonderful. So I know I've said who this award is for, but I'm not quite sure what the award is. Is it, what's the name of the, oh, it's my phone. Hang on a moment. Sorry, I'm just at an award ceremony. Oh, what's that? What? Really? You mean they're burning trees? The oldest form of creating energy known to man? What's pioneering about that? This is a disgrace! I've just heard that Drax are responsible for driving deforestation in countries around the world. Oh, hang on, there's a message. Oh, that's it. Well done, Drax. Or more commiserations. I'm accepting on your behalf the award for the slimiest greenwash.
Thank you, Friends of the Earth Liverpool. Welcome back to the Scottish and UK Polluter Awards. From this point on, the awards relate to the UK as a whole. We partner with our friends at UKYCC, FOE Scotland, 350org, Biofuel Watch, MedAct and Culture Unsustained to bring you the following awards. The Net Zero Credibility Award acknowledges the entrepreneurs who claim we don't need to keep the fossil fuels in the ground. Rather, we can continue to grow our economies and use tricks of accounting to make our emissions seem smaller. And now, announcing the nominees.
Hello everyone. It looks like I have turned up as the ghost of net zero. I am just now about as real as a net zero promise. Okay, so we've got 6 nominees in this category, a very hotly contested category. First up, our first nominee is Equinor, the Norwegian oil giant who are hoping to use nature-based solutions to achieve net zero by 2050, all the while planning to increase oil and gas output by 3% per year until 2026. Equinor have achieved a rebrand of historic proportions, with major publications like Bloomberg posting about how Equinor are turning from an oil and gas company to a major player in the renewables revolution. The one problem with this is that oil and gas production by Equinor continues at their previous levels, and renewable energy sold by Equinor makes up as little as 0.5% of their overall portfolio. The next nominee is HSBC. So, out of the vault and into the running, HSBC have signed up to net zero, whilst also being the second biggest funder of fossil fuel projects in Europe since the Paris Agreement. The UK's biggest investment bank, HSBC, has been the bank of choice, to give a few examples, for Quadrilla, and lent £63 million to Dart Energy. But don't worry there, folks, we have more. HSBC are also a faithful partner to state violence, all the way back to the bank's founding during the Opium Wars. where British merchants forced their opium on China, resulting in devastation. And HSBC continue their misadventures in colonialism today, funding Israel's apartheid in Palestine and the UK's detention estate. All right, next up, they're back. It's BP. So BP have announced an ambition to reduce their oil and gas production by 40% for 2030. However, they have no plans to reduce their oil and gas that is owned by Russian state oil firm Rosneft, which amounts to about 27% of the reserves. Sneaky, sneaky. BP caught the greenwashing bug 20 years ago in their Beyond Petroleum rebrand, which is behind the green star in their logo. They are also clinging onto carbon capture technologies to offset their plans to be extracting and selling oil and gas right up to 2050. Beyond Petroleum, what a farce. Okay, our fourth nominee. They're back as well. It's Barclays. Barclays are committed to fracking with a 97% share in a fracking firm, Third Energy. Barclays made a pledge to aim for net zero by 2050, while in the same year they took on £200 million more investments in fossil fuel projects, increasing their holdings from the previous year. Talk about a power move. We have another returning nominee next. We have Drax. No one knows how to burn a fuel source quite at high temperature like Drax. They've done coal, they've done gas, and now they're focusing quite heavily on wood. These climate alchemists have made tree burning renewable. How about that? Drax plans for its Yorkshire-based power station to become the world's first carbon-negative power station by 2030. I mean, no one knows how they'll do this, as their own bioenergy with carbon capture and storage experiments at the power station have been completely unsuccessful. And our final nominee is Heathrow Airport. Heathrow Airport plans to run the world's first net zero airport. How about that? But obviously that doesn't include the reason it's there in the first place, the planes. Contrary to local opinion and the advice of climate experts, Heathrow is pushing ahead with the third runway, showing their commitment to destruction for profit. So while the High Court ruled the third runway illegal, this was actually overturned by the Supreme Court, meaning Heathrow is one step closer to becoming an even more toxic polluter in the near future. And now back to our host to announce the award.
Incredible amounts of bullshitting going on there. It's really just quite astounding. So the winner is Drax, and we're going to hand it over to our pals at Biofuel Watch to accept this award.
Ladies and gentlemen, government and industry, we have great pleasure, or rather no pleasure at all, in awarding the Polluter of the Year awards on behalf of Glasgow Calls Out Polluters. We're here today outside the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy to present two awards. So let's start with the Zero Credibility Award, or rather, to give it its full title, the Net Zero Credibility Award. There was stiff competition from the winner from Heathrow Airport, HSBC, BP, Barclays and Equinor. And these are some of the world's biggest polluters, all jumping on the net zero bandwagon, whilst still, of course, cashing in on burning fossil fuels. But our winner goes further than all of them, claiming it will become carbon negative and suck that carbon right out of the air. Yes, you've probably guessed it. Our winner is Drax Power Station in Yorkshire, England. The biggest emitter of carbon in the UK and the biggest burner of trees on the planet, for which it gets more than £2 million a day subsidies from Bays behind us. Please welcome one of Drax's cooling towers to accept the award. Now, Drax isn't just claiming to be net zero, it is claiming it can become a carbon negative power station by 2030. Amazing. Given that it emits 13 million tonnes of carbon dioxide on average from burning trees every year, how is it going to work this magic? Well, according to Drax, it can use bioenergy with carbon capture and storage technology to capture the CO2 from burning its trees, and since that was carbon neutral already, it amounts to taking carbon out of the atmosphere. Magic, isn't it? It's also sophistry and dangerous rubbish, by the way. But what they don't say is that their world-beating ambition to be carbon negative is based on unproven BECCS technology. As yet, Drax's pilot project to capture 1 ton of carbon dioxide every day, which they plan to use to keep the fizz in beer, has proved completely unsuccessful. So all its 13 million tonnes of CO2 continue pouring into the atmosphere. But since the government is intent on giving carbon capture, usage and storage £1 billion, Drax is looking forward to claiming large subsidies for doing nothing. But even if BECCS did work in the future, Drax fails to mention that it would lead to the destruction of more forests and the conversion of large areas to monoculture tree plantations to supply the wood to burn in the power stations, which would severely affect biodiversity and food security. So, let's give Drax a huge boo for being world-beating bullshitters about the carbon impact of biomass and the promise of BECCS. Here, have a small wooden spoon.
Thank you, Biofuel Watch. And now we are ready to announce another of our UK Polluter Awards, the hotly anticipated Building Back Badly Award. It's all very well for Boris Johnson to talk about building back better, a phrase he shamelessly co-opted, but it means very little without meaningful action. Our nominees are institutions who are committed to building back badly.
Thanks, Kat. We have 5 nominees for this prestigious Building Back Badly award. And first up is the Bank of England. As a response package to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Bank of England has greenlit bailouts to a host of big polluters, including £600 million to oil company Baker Hughes, as well as bailouts to aviation giants EasyJet and Ryanair, with no strings attached. Clearly one of the architects of the rush to build back badly and a strong contender for our award. Next up is HS2. When it comes to building back badly, you cannot find a more perfect example of an infrastructure project than the HS2 railway line. Here's to destroying ancient woodlands, harming communities, and wrecking some of the UK's most important nature sites. With the first trains not due to run before 2029 at the earliest, and spiralling costs already £800 million over budget for a railway that's designed to cater for business passengers who may never need it due to changes in working patterns, HS2 is the ultimate vanity project, on track for climate chaos. Our third nominee is Peel Ports. Peel Ports are a privately owned infrastructure firm registered in the Isle of Man. They're in cahoots with fellow big polluter Drax to operate a huge biomass terminal at Liverpool Port, where imported wood pellets from clear-felled southern US forests arrive in the UK and are taken by train across the north of England to burn in Drax. Peel's parent company, Peel Holdings, proudly proclaims on its website that the company is positively impacting people's lives. While it has been positively impacting the finances of its founder, John Whittaker, the same cannot be said of the inhabitants of the north of England and southern Scotland, who are impacted by this company's building back badly. Our fourth nominee is SSE and the Scottish Government for BIFAB. A consequence of decades of failure in industrial strategy has led to a shambolic situation at the BIFAB yards in Fife and Lewis. With many workers already let go and fabrication now taking place in a Chinese free trade zone, clearly SSE's approach to just transition is, we'll look after ours, you look after yours. And our final nominee for the Building Back Badly Award is Heathrow Airport. We've added Heathrow Airport to this award category following their successful attempt to overturn the court decision to block the proposed third runway. Heathrow successfully argued that the initial ruling to approve the third runway was based on older, less stringent climate targets, so Heathrow should proceed. Hooray for legal loopholes! This is for a project so toxic and mind-bendingly stupid that even Boris Johnson doesn't back it. Therefore, it's ideal for a Building Back Badly award.
And the winner is HS2. With such a packed field, we had no idea who would take pole position, but HS2 seems to have hogged the track to victory. Now we go to our friends at Stop HS2 Staffordshire to accept the Building Back Badly award on HS2's behalf.
The Building Back Badly Award, HS2, for destroying ancient woodlands, harming communities and astronomical overspending.
Thank you very much. I'm very honoured to accept this award, and it's a very timely award too. In these times of complete climate breakdown, I think it's just wonderful that we're using billions of pounds of taxpayers' money to destroy Britain's countryside. Furthermore, I've had an award from the NFU for our services to agriculture, confiscating huge amounts of farmers' land and then not paying them for it. We've had lots of accolades from pro-democracy groups for the way we force people that are involved in HS2 land grabs to sign a non-disclosure agreement on pain of never getting any compensation. We've also had awards from independent building contractors who are delighted by the fact that they can't get on with any work because we've absorbed all the cement and sand and aggregate in the entire country. We've had so many things thrown in our direction, and we're so proud. We're spending so much public money. The NHS is now on its knees. Schools are seriously underfunded. The social care system is completely bankrupted. And we have the worst school meals in Western Europe. So thank you, Boris, and all your lickspittles for giving us all this wonderful money to completely destroy the country. I'm very honoured to accept this award on your behalf.
Way!
And now we reach our last and perhaps least sought after award. Yes, it is the prestigious Lifetime Achievement Award. And we have a special guest to host our award. Please welcome Alok Sharma, President of COP26.
Only the most accomplished at spewing carbon, ecosystem polluting, and community destroying even get a look in for this award. With the Lifetime Achievements Award, you are asked to acknowledge the company that has been unrelenting in its dedication to pollution and made more than a pretty penny in doing so. Sounds jolly good to me. Now on to our final list of nominees. First up, raise your glasses for the fourth largest polluter in the world, ExxonMobil. In Scotland, they operate the Fife ethylene plant at Mossmoran, which in 2018 stood as the country's third largest industrial polluter. An unsurpassed North Sea Numpty, their North Sea operations produced 80,000 barrels of oil and 441 million cubic feet of gas per day. And equally successful at sowing discord as they are at driving carbon emissions, Exxon have been aware of the effect of carbon dioxide in causing climate change since 1968, but instead of being rather silly and telling the truth, they cunningly invested in climate denial, stalling meaningful action by decades. Next up is Shell. Shell is the seventh on the list of historic carbon polluters and a community destroyer par excellence. Their operations in the Niger Delta over the past 20 years have spilled over 1.8 million tonnes of oil, which they rightfully refuse to clean up. Their position as a peerless polluter has been in full display in Scotland, with the Mossmoran gas facility in Fife, the St Fergus gas terminal in Peterhead, and a 30% stake in the proposed Cambo Oil Field, all the while paying no tax in the UK. An arrangement I give my rotten-hearted support to. Our third challenger is BAE Systems. BAE is the Bay of Europe and the UK when it comes to contracting defence. They are knee-deep in the nuclear weapons industry, and their record as a heavy lifter for neo-imperialism is unsurpassed. They are the 6th largest military contractor in the world to the single biggest institutional carbon emitter, the US military. And Saudi Arabia is their 3rd largest customer, having put all their weapons to jolly good use in bombing in Yemen. BAE achieved their prominence through the support of government investment, including the Strathclyde Pension Fund, based in Glasgow, who invest tens of millions of public money into the company. Pride of Glasgow, BAE still run 2 facilities along the docks where they're building new cruisers for the Royal Navy fleet. 4th is INEOS. INEOS are rightfully lauded by the likes of me for their activities in the fracked gas sector, including bringing devastation to local communities in Yorkshire, polluting water sources and causing tremors. However, they are walling in North Sea oil and gas as well, and the new gas-powered blue hydrogen power plant they intend to build in Grangemouth demonstrates their undying commitment to gas. INEOS are exceptionally good at being a horrendously bad business. Next up is Drax. Drax Power Station in Yorkshire is truly one of the best examples of the kind of polluter we like in this country. Owner of the UK's biggest power station, Drax claims that being the world's biggest burner of trees makes it renewable, a renewable alternative to fossil fuels. And I'm happy to admit our government has bought that hook, line and sinker. And if this wasn't enough, Drax has expanded its biomass burning capacity by swallowing Pinnacle, a major Canadian wood-burning pellet producer. And finally, we have BP. BP, or Beyond Petroleum, are trying to rebrand themselves as a climate solution. I say this is beyond plausible. With much hoo-ha, they have announced a new focus on achieving net zero and expanding renewables, aiming for a 40% reduction in oil and gas production by 2030. This, happily, avoiding mention of the first-rate loopholes in this commitment, omitting BP's stake in fellow sterling polluter Rosneft, which Oil Change International says excludes 46% of their extracted carbon. When layered on top of their role as 6th largest historical polluter, stalwart of North Sea oil extraction and pioneer driver of climate denial and greenwashing, we can see why BP were a favourite of mine to corporate capture and store this award. Now over to Kat.
For exceptional services to pollution is Drax. Clearly a highly competitive field, but Drax chainsawed and burned through the opposition. Bravo. Now we go to the polluter itself, a Drax chimney tower, to accept our final and most prestigious award.
Thank you. We at Drax are so touched and appreciative that the judges got what we're about. It was so simple, really. We just kept on saying sustainable biomass, and Europe's biggest decarbonisation project, again and again, and paying Tony Juniper to say it on film, and paying our MP, Nigel Adams, £10,000, and doing loads of sponsorships of net zero festivals and other events in order to get platforms until you all, or most of you, believed it. We're so credible, it's incredible. And the Lifetime Achievement Award, thank you, amazing and so well deserved. There are so many people I'd like to thank, without whom we wouldn't have won this, and in particular, BAs, the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, who have been behind us all the way as they are today. They have been so generous with your money, billions over the years helping us to burn more trees and coal. And I'd particularly like to thank the Americans for their forests, and the Canadians and Estonians and Latvians, so generous, and the lovely animals and plants, black bears, fly traps, so generously and willingly giving up their homes, despite many of them going extinct. I have a collection of birds here, all of them from old grove mangrove forests. Thank you. As you can see, there is a variety. We have the chimney swift, the Karelian warbler, the Kentucky warbler, and storks. All of these are going extinct with your help. Thank you again. And I'd like to thank all those organisations who have allowed us to sponsor their events, to get a platform to repeat their lives, politicians who have met with us, and you all for voting for us and paying our subsidies. We could not have done it without you.
Inspiring words from a Drax chimney tower there. Well, we've reached the end of the evening. There have been highs, and I would like to say lows, but low carbon, low fossil fuel emissions, low temperatures, there's been a distinct lack of those. Anyway, the night has been a dizzying tour de fossil force of Scotland and the UK. It is revealed that some things never change. The big polluters plan for business as usual long after the media frenzy of COP26 is just a memory, a story we will tell around the campfire. Drax, whether burning fossil gas and trees or coal, remains the biggest polluter in the UK and had a 3-award flush. Talk about reaching for the smog-obscured sky. We have learned that Heathrow will be belching out flights and INEOS keeping the gas lights flickering for years to come with their petrochemical works at Grangemouth. Our North Sea numpties are still committed to maximum economic recovery of oil and gas, and as is the UK and Scottish government. The more things change, the more they stay the same, with representatives of the landed gentry such as Buccleuch and Crown Estates lording their way into our awards. A reminder of how much better the lot of us could manage our surroundings in common, and that the climate lens has just put some older problems into sharper focus. But most importantly, we need to thank all of you who voted in, whose outrage shared the vote and the event, who took a chance to slay the big bads of climate breakdown. 100 companies are responsible for 71% of global emissions, and it is nice to collectively aim blame where it belongs. Thank you for sharing this with us. Thank you for seeing through the greenwash, the net zero credibility, the carbon capture con, and blue hydrogen baloney. All these tech bro fixes to a problem of corporate power run rampant. We love and appreciate you all. Remember to follow our friends at Biofuel Watch UK, Stop HS2 Staffordshire, Campaign Against the Arms Trade, Divest Strathclyde, MedAct, Friends of the Earth Falkirk, BP or not BP, and even Glasgow Calls Out Polluters. We would all appreciate your support in organising power in the fight for a livable world and climate justice. Love and solidarity.
Hit the road, Drax, and don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Drax, and don't you come back no more. Hit the road, Drax, and don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Drax, and don't you come back no more. Oh, Drax, don't tell us you're clean. You're the dirtiest business that we've ever seen. Public subsidies to keep you alive, while the climate has to struggle to survive. That's right. Hit the road, Drax, don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Drax, don't you come back no more. Hit the road, Drax, don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Drax, don't you come back no more. Oh, Drax, it's a crying shame. You're hacking down forests for your sinister gain. While you fake sustainability, woodland wreckage is your legacy. That's right. So hit the road, Drax, and don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, tracks, and don't you come back no more. Hit the road, tracks, and don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, tracks, and don't you come back no more.